Thank you all for coming. My name is Shane Sealis. We're going to have Matt Brand give a talk on artificial intelligence. Then we're going to have 4 5-minute show and tell slots where you can show something you're working on, something you think is cool, whatever. Who wants a slot? I do. You do. You do. One more slot.
You can do more.
Okay, good. We got our 4 slots. And yeah, that's it. Matt, take it away.
Thanks.
$5 each will sell 1,000.
Alright. So I'm here today to talk about artificial intelligence, and particularly artificial intelligence in games, because that's my experience with it. So just a brief bit about me. I graduated Champlain College in 2012. It was my second bachelor degree. I went back to school because I realized that I was programming a lot and I was not passionate at all about what I was programming. And I realized that I wanted to be passionate about what I was doing. So I kind of put the two together. Passion is coding and gaming, and went back to school for that. And I formed Vermont Games with a few people at the end of the school. And then we launched out of school, hit the ground running with, we made 2 games, proprietary games, Lock and Pathogen. And then we became Game Theory, and we have since transitioned into contract games. After our second game did well publicly, like it had awesome reviews and is really well received. It hit the App Store well. It was in like the top. It was featured. It was in like the top.
Was this Pathogen?
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, it was a great game. Hit the top like 10 in board games for a while, and we just didn't see enough revenues to keep going as a game developer. So we just switched over to contract gaming, and now we build games for hire. So that's what I do. My specialties are 2D turn-based games, so games where one person takes a turn, changes the state of the board, and then the next person takes a turn. And then especially board game translations. So I've done, Pathogen is somewhat of a board game idea, but I've also done actual board game translations from GMT games. I made Leaping Lemmings into an app, and now I'm working on Dominant Species. So what I don't do is provide instructions for world domination, or on how to go back in the future to prevent world domination. So if you're here for that kind of artificial intelligence, you're not in the right place, unfortunately. So AI in games, in 2D games, is really about creating behavior that's believable. So you want behavior that feels like you're playing against someone that has intelligence, like a human player. But I didn't do it with machine learning. I didn't do it with more complex aspects of AI. I did it using simple behaviors that when you put them together, it feels believable. So if you put a few simple things together, like a few kind of very simple decision factors, when put together, it feels like there's this complex decision being made. But really, it's just a few factors that are being weighed. If you try to make too much complexity to it, it actually can feel convoluted, or it can drive the behavior into very specific channels that gets very stagnant or stuck in certain ways. So combining simple behaviors is the main aspect. And then what you do, or what I do in general, is I assemble a list of all possible moves or strategies. And then you pick one based on certain criteria, right? And I'll get into this later. And then a couple important factors for creating fun play are ruling out the bad options and using some random factors. Because really, if you create a list of all possible plays and then you pick one just based on numbers, it could be the worst play possible because you're not weighing certain other criteria to see if it's just a bad move that a human would never make. So you have to rule out certain bad options, and then random factors just thrown in just make it fun, because if you don't have randomness, then if you're playing against an AI that calculates things relatively similar every time, you're going to get a very static experience. So Pathogen is a turn-based strategy game. It came out in 2013 and early 2014 for Android. And basically, I don't know if you guys have played it, but it's like you try to take up most of the board. And so at the end of the game, whoever has most of the board taken with their color wins. And so you put down pieces, you put down cells, and if you put the same type of cell on top of itself, it replicates and spreads out in the board. So you get these kind of very cool, like, spreading behavior. And so the way that I designed the AI for this is that I would take a look at the layout of the board, and for each color, I would assess a point value of what the board is at. So for blue, like, it would calculate all the blue for the different types of cells, calculate a point value, and then subtract the other player's colors from that, and I would get an overall value. And then what I would do is I'd generate a list of all possible moves. So blue can only play A cell and B cell and the virus. So it can't play the B cell. So I would look at where on the board it can play these two pieces. I would generate a list of all those plays, and then I would project into the future what would happen if I played this piece here, this piece here. And so just every single move I would project in this giant list. And then I would take all those projections and calculate the score for each of those, and then I would say, what's the difference? I would say, do I lose points or gain points? And then I'd sort that list from top to bottom and say, okay, this is the best move, and this is the worst move, right? And then, like I said before, you have to rule out these bad moves, because there's certain moves that may give you a better score, but will set the other player up to just dominate, right? So there's certain moves that I have to say, okay, does this move leave a tactical advantage for the opponent? And if it does, take it out. So I'm left with this list of possible good moves, and then I say, okay, for hard, if you're playing the hard difficulty, you take the best move. And for medium, you take like the top 30% or something like that, and you pick a random value in there. And then for like easy, you take the top 50% and pick a value in there. And that gives like a nice spread. So sometimes easy makes a really good move, and sometimes it makes a dumb move. And then you also throw in some random factors. So sometimes easy will just do something totally dumb and random. And yeah, so, and one of the complexities of this project was that it was done in Flash, so it was done with ActionScript. So that was one of the technology challenges that I worked with. So the game I'm working on now is called Dominant Species, and what it is a much more complicated game, where you have phases you have a planning phase and then an execution phase. And in the planning phase, you decide what you want to do in the execution phase. And there's all these different kinds of turns, and in the execution phase, each one of these actions does something pretty different in the game. So I couldn't just go in and do like a board assessment like I did in Pathogen. I couldn't calculate like a score and say like, okay, if you did this, what's the difference in score? There were just too many weird random factors going on and too many nuances. So what I did was I took each behavior and I made kind of like its own decision making process for each behavior, and said, okay, what are the possible moves for this behavior, and does this result in a better move or worse move? And then I take the best move for hard or whatever, same kind of idea. And the other weird thing about this game is that there are these cards that do pretty random, out there things. So you'll be playing, and then the AI will do something really, really kind of random with the card, like all of a sudden all your population of animals. Basically, the goal of the game is to have the most territory occupied by animals, and each species has different advantages. There's insects, arachnids, amphibians, birds, mammals, and reptiles, and and some of the cards will be like eliminate all the species down to one. It'd just be kind of a random rule, just thrown in there. Which is weird when you're actually playing the game. I found it was kind of annoying and weird because it just felt so random. But when designing the AI, it actually was advantageous, because it was this weird random factor that the AI would just play a card and do something really devastating all of a sudden that you couldn't counter, because it was just this kind of weird random rule. So that made it kind of fun. This game is actually coming out very soon. I just submitted it to the App Store, and it's got AI, so you can play up to 6 players, and it's going to have multiplayer too, which I'm now working on. So that's fun too. And this is in Unity and C#, so it's a much easier technology to work with. I'm blowing through these slides. So next, what I'm working on is, and this may incorporate deeper aspects of machine learning. We're not quite sure what the scope of the work is, but we're working with a dialogue system to track, assess how interviewers do in their interview process. So it's like, a person comes to a house and they start talking with a family and doing an interview process, and you get to pick the questions and the responses that the interviewer asks, and then the responder will have their generated dialogue. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there's an awesome talk on GDC's website from 2012 based on dialogue systems, and the way it worked is that the guy is just a genius idea. Basically, he said that the more complex of a system that you build, the harder it is to actually develop anything of use. So he created this really simple system that was then able to use for these very complex looking things. And the way that he did it was he created a dictionary of responses for particular dialogue, and it had weight of criteria that you met. And so the criteria check was a bool, just either true or false. And so you threw in this like chain of criteria for the state of the world or the state of the person you were talking to or whatever, and it would just say, it would evaluate like if I'm going to a house and if I've already talked to this person, it would check that, and so that's true or false. And then it's like, if they have been in a fight since I've talked to them, that evaluates to true or false. And so you go through the dictionary, and it goes through and says true, yes, true, yes, true, yes. And so you give a weight to the question. It has like a weight of 4. And then the one with the best score, you just pick that answer. And it's pretty genius. So we're pretty excited to implement that into our interview stuff, and hopefully some maybe even more complex behavior, like some machine learning, like that the responder would learn something about you based on previous conversations, and then would be able to respond with that kind of stuff.
A question.
Yeah.
So this is for a future game?
It's for a game that we're in the design phase. We're starting actual development in July.
So this kind of combat kind of the problem with like, you know, role-playing game, you go to somebody's house, you have the exact same, you know, talk with them every time.
Right,
Like, okay.
Totally, yeah. Well, and in order to deal with that, we'll have random factors again. You know, like when you start the game, it's actually going to be state-based. So you'll, like, if you're using it in Florida, you can say, like, have you seen an alligator lately? Or, you know, something kind of very geographically based. And then using all those random factors, piece together a scenario that's very specific and unique. You know?
So are you guys going to be doing any natural language processing, or no?
I don't know what that is. What's natural language processing?
It's when you take the words that are given and you again, it's a machine learning thing where you again have like weights to certain words and then their relationships to each other, and then your program can understand what the sentence is based on all those things.
Oh.
And actually, a lot of times it's based on a set of parallel data, or like a huge set of data, a huge set of training data, right?
That's a cool idea. We're weighing all these ideas right now, so I'll bring it to.
It's also natural language understanding.
Neural network, language learning things.
Cool.
All kind of different
Yeah,
techniques. There's a lot of
methods.
Markov chains they use in natural language understanding.
But there are some like a little bit simpler ways of doing it. You know what I mean? Like the way that Google would do it, for
Instead of
example, is
using
like
views,
not within
tables.
the reach of most of us, right? But there are some simpler ways of doing it.
Cool. Yeah, I'll bring it to the table. I don't know if there are the lead designer is Marguerite, my coworker, and she's working with this company to develop everything up front. Mm-hmm. You know, and then we'll obviously use development that iterates too. So yeah, any ideas would be awesome. Thanks. So yeah, I mean that's all the slides I have. I hope that wasn't too quick.
No, it's great.
Well, I have a question.
Okay.
So you're looking at this board game, which we call the search space, right? All the possible moves. How deep do you go?
How deep do I
How
go?
how many moves ahead do you look?
In Pathogen, I only looked one ahead.
Okay.
But then looking at what the possible response could be.
Yeah.
At least one ahead. So
Okay,
I guess
so
you could say two
opponent's
moves ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. But I found that just doing one move ahead and looking at the response was enough to get a pretty tough system. Like
Yeah.
I have a friend, actually, he's playing it on hard, and he came to me, it was like a few months ago, and he was like, man, I still haven't beaten a few of these levels.
Strong enough then.
That felt really good.
Yeah.
So that kind of speaks to like what you were saying about complexity, right? That more complex isn't necessarily better.
Right. Although it depends on the game. Like in chess,
Chess, you have to
you
look
need
ahead.
to look
Do you look
a
deep?
certain amount ahead in order to have anything that can compete well. You know?
Yeah, would you say that the turn-based mechanic of board games leads to a better understanding of artificial intelligence, or the way to design it? Because the
like
question-
larger scope in artificial intelligence.
How to explain it? With the previous question about how far deep you're looking forward,
Yeah.
I would assume, or at least to my knowledge with board games, you only really have to look at not only what's the next move, but what is the response going to be, or
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
And beyond that is just way too many possibilities to even be worth putting into the coding for artificial intelligence.
Right.
So that's where my question comes from. Do you think that the turn-based mechanic leads to a better understanding of, or at least simplifies the process, would you say?
Yeah, I would say it does. And I think depending upon what strategy you take it would lend itself to the more deeper aspects. Someone actually suggested for dominant species that I do machine learning, so that as you're playing it, it kind of learns your behavior and then protects against certain things. We just didn't have the budget to do it, honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very
there's a few games that do that, and those are hard. That's tough.
Yeah.
But, oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to ask, for testing your AI, like, do you just have users, go for it, beta testers, like, how do you feel confident about it, and that you don't just have some, like, blind spot where you're like, oh, I haven't seen that situation, I didn't account for it,
Right.
and the whole, thing that I've crafted where it seems smart, it seems humanish, just falls apart because you see it do something idiotic.
Right. Well, honestly, with Pathogen, we didn't have a big tester base, so I got really I guess I got lucky that I designed a system that played out really well. With Dominant Species, GMT Games has a pretty big following base. Mm-hmm. They actually had already 2 companies try to make a digital version of this game and fail. The first one put out just a terrible version of the app that people hate. That actually their GMT Games is giving our version as a free update, just to like appease their fan base. And then a second company stepped in and tried to make another port and failed completely and didn't even put something out. So we're the third company working on this project. So they have this big following that's been waiting for this digital update. And so they got like 30 people to sign up on iTunes Connect for the beta. So I've just been putting out like weekly releases. And I was ready to publish it like a month ago, but the head of GMT Games said, let's just wait and let's just keep like putting it out there. And these guys are really into the game. Like, so for me, like playing this game was kind of ridiculous. Like when I get a few turns in, I was just like, okay, I'm done. But these guys are hardcore, they want to go all the way and they want to see all the nuances of it. So
How many players do they have of their board game? Right?
How many what?
How many people are playing their board game? You're taking this from a board game to the...
Yeah, I think they have a pretty strong following. I don't know the specific numbers, but they produce these hardcore niche strategy games that people just love.
Yeah.
And one more thing I want to say about that is that iTunes has made it, I don't know if you guys know, but iTunes has made it harder to beta test. It used to be that test flight was so easy and you could just put something up and it's boom, it's out, and now iTunes is just kind of a pain in the ass.
You have to invite people.
I hope they made it
You have to
better.
invite people,
Yeah,
you have to
do that.
You have to review. It has to be reviewed. A beta thing has to be reviewed.
We just updated our App Store game, and we just wanted to change some loading screens. That's like really trivial stuff, right?
Yeah,
and we fixed a few bugs, and I'm like, man, no, it's got to go through
I
review
know.
again, and you wait 2 weeks.
Weeks.
So there's none of this rapid turnaround with Apple. Forget it.
The beta review actually is shorter.
Yeah,
That's the good thing. But yeah.
In Google, you just throw it out there, man.
I know.
It has an instant Google Play.
Well, this could be kind of a follow-up on the testing question, I guess. I mean, one thing that occurs to me is making AI, you've built a sort of test rig. Like, have you ever pitted AIs against each other and recorded the games and gotten things out of that?
Totally. And that's really kind of fun to do. Like with Dominant Species, you just set it up with 6 players, and then you can kind of work on a project and kind of like watch as they like deal it out.
There's a great paper from, it's probably 20 years ago now, called TD Gammon, and this guy developed an AI to play backgammon, and it brought itself to the master's level by playing itself. Just back and forth like this, and it's very cool, and it's actually a hard game to do AI for. Yeah, because it's all based on, well, did you win at the end? So if you look up TD Gammon, it's pretty cool. One of the early AI successes.
That's cool.
One follow-up thing to that, like when you're having multiple players, that's particularly getting the idea. Do you ever it's not going so far as like machine learning, but do you ever have a concept of like a personality for your AI? So ones that play aggressively, ones that are defensive, maybe like have more continuous strategy, not be purely random?
Totally. Actually, I'll just go back to
I want to play the one who loses and cries. You're very satisfying. You pay extra for that personality.
Yeah, if it gives you grief, it's like, you suck.
For this game in particular, there wasn't as much personalities as strategy types.
Yeah.
So like about 3 turns in, I have a basic early game strategy that all the AI will do. And then about 3 turns in, I evaluate like how the players are doing in the state of the board and say, okay, what do I want my real game strategy to be? And there were like 4 different ones. And depending upon what strategy they chose, they had different actions that they would pick. And it made for some really cool play because there's you can see the snowflake there. That means that that AI has tundra strategy, so it's trying to take the most tundra and get the most species on the tundra tiles, and it will be very different from other strategies. So they compete really well and interestingly. But my teacher developed the PS2 version of Risk, and he said what they did was they had world leaders that they kind of simulated behavior for.
That's clever.
Yeah. And so they had the more like protective and defensive leader, and the guy who was like super gung ho and just like tried to attack everything all at once, and that sounded cool too.
So, I have a question about the different phases of dominant species.
Yeah.
Do you just end up giving the different phases different weights of what they scored in relation to each other, and then tally that up to something to determine what kind of phase your AI wants to take? Or?
What I did was I took a preferential list, because each of these phases has so there's 3 slots in adaptation, there's 2 slots in regression, there's only 1 slot. So it's really strange how you play, but basically not all the choices are always available.
Okay.
Right? So what I would do is in the early game strategy, I would say this is number 1, adaptation's number 1, domination's number 2, speciation's number 3, and I would have a list of preferential behaviors. And I would go through the list. I would say, is number 1 available? No, bounce to number 2. Is number 2 available? Okay, take it.
So there are always perfect moves in the game?
No. And there's some random factors too. So okay, what I would do is I would say, so if adaptation wasn't available, we'd look for domination, right? And if domination is available, then I would calculate a percentage chance of whether it would use domination or not.
Okay.
And then I would throw a random roll. And I would say, do I hit that? So if the chance to use domination is only 50% and I throw a 30, then I don't use domination, then I go to the next choice. And that way it gave it some randomness, but it was a good feel too, it made sense why they wouldn't use it.
Okay. So for all of these AIs, I guess the focus is never to make your AI play perfect games, because that doesn't necessarily feel good. It probably feels pretty bad.
It's boring, really. And you don't want the player to get crushed.
Yeah.
You want them to have fun playing, right?
And also, I guess these games have complexity that's just too huge to really calculate out everything.
This did. Yeah, this particularly was actually a really difficult game to design AI for. It took me we're way over scope. And I'm happy with it, but honestly, I could put another couple months in and refine it to a pretty awesome degree. Right now, it's good. It plays well, and I have a feeling that the hardcore players are going to kill it, but that it's gonna play well enough to give the average player a good chance.
Then maybe they'll come back to you and have you redo it.
Right.
Maybe. That'd be cool.
I don't know if this game has any hidden state, like in poker, nobody can see your hand.
Right.
But when you're writing the AI, sometimes you avail yourself of everything that's available to just get it to do the right thing. So did you have to do anything that made you feel unclean or like I'm cheating?
Oh, that's good.
I can see your cards. It's on my book.
I'm trying to think. I don't think there is. I think everything is laid out cleanly in this game.
There's no hidden information.
No, there's no hidden information, and it's the same with Pathogen.
No.
So, but that would be interesting to play with too. Make harder. You could.
Yeah.
A little fudge factor.
Like if you knew what cards everybody had.
Right. Yeah. The only cards here are like public cards, so everybody can see all 5 cards that are available.
Oh, yeah.
And you
So
just
there's
pick
magic. I got
one.
this coming. Sun does it.
Throw
all the
something
time.
out.
Kills me.
Any other questions, comments? Yeah.
Do you have any existing games that are like inspirations to you, or things you've studied, like other game implementations of AIs in games that are out there? They're somehow publicly available. I don't know. I haven't done any reading about it.
That's a good question.
Tips and tricks.
I mean, most of the stuff that I've really been inspired by hasn't been along these lines. Honestly, it's been like, my favorite games are just like kind of hardcore indie platformer games, like Super Meat Boy, Spelunky, Bit Trip Runner, that kind of stuff. With AI, it's really difficult. But I played a lot of these kinds of games as a kid, but I haven't played a lot of strategy board games like this. This kind of came out of nowhere. For me, Pathogen, our designer, came up with, and I was like, okay, I just stepped into the role of creating the AI on it without much personal passion for it, but it kind of grew out of that. Yeah.
So did the fact that, back to Pathogen, the fact that you were only thinking like one play ahead, was the fact that you had random factors coming in make that work better? Because otherwise, I would think if I were playing, I could guess what the AI was, how the AI was going to weight something, right?
Yeah,
like that's what you do, right? You start, you start knowing how the game is programmed.
Totally, and like I would use more random factors early in the game, because early in the game you have so much of the board available. You don't want it to always pick like if it always picks that one when the board is empty, you're going to notice it.
Yeah.
Right? But then later in the game, it usually never looks the same. It usually looks different based on what the player does and if there's some random factor, what the AI does. So later in the game, if it has very specific choices that it makes, that's okay, because the state of the board is usually very different from game to game.
So it was really based on visual, not on gameplay.
It's about believable. It's like what is believable to the player. Like I would play it against the AI and I would be like, oh, it keeps doing that one thing. I don't want it to keep doing that one thing, and then I would kind of look at the code and say, okay, that's the decision that it's making. How can I make this more fluid and more flexible, more believable?
Does this somehow? It seems to somehow parallel the game, ancient game Go.
Yeah. That was a really
thing.
big inspiration on it. Yeah.
The other one looks like Settlers of Catan.
Right.
With
Yeah.
the next
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Definitely inspiration for both. Yeah. My coworker Zach, he actually works for Disney designing games now, which is awesome. He kind of moved on. But he came up with this. I love the game. I feel like it's a really genius idea, and it is really simple. Really simple and beautiful. Anyone else? Cool.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Matt.
I want to say that you explained statistical theory in a way that was much more accessible and interesting than I've ever heard before, right? Like all the weights and everything, that usually that's not how it's explained. That was much more interesting.
Cool.
And decision trees, you explained that much.
Thank you. I hope I didn't I was hoping I didn't gloss over too quickly that people weren't following me.
I mean, that was a really, like, statistics professors should take some. They should use something like pathogen to use a game to
Right.
explain statistics.
Well,
That would be more fun.
contextual examples just go a long way.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
So, quick overview. We're making me, that's Zach, and another guy, and then 2 other guys that aren't here. So our company, Not a Hipster Coffee Shop, we make mobile games. So this is our latest game. We're working with some other designers from Champlain College who recently graduated. We also just graduated since the last meeting. So it's a puzzle game about lining up lasers. It's called Vivid Grid. It's kind of like, I'll kind of hold it up real quick. So it looks like this is like the level select, and then you go into a game, and it's kind of got a grid, and then there's buttons on the side that you tap that rotate turrets that are in a line, and then so there's like a starting point that the laser comes out of. The lasers aren't visually in the game yet, so you just kind of have to follow the arrows. So this is about 3 weeks in development. We're hoping on finishing it up in the next week or 2 and just kind of throw it out there. So it's good. It's a quick project. There'll be like 50 levels. It's kind of based on visuals and sound and colors. So it's being developed for iOS in Unity 5. Once that's out, we'll look at an Android.
How are you doing the laser lines? Do you know yet?
Like visually? So like right now it's a pretty, it's basically just like an array that keeps track of everything. So the visuals and the data model, I don't know about the visuals yet. It shouldn't be too complex.
We use something called Vectrosity, which is
It's
and
good.
ask that for Unity to draw lines and glowing lines and
Wow.
lasers. So
That's good to know because lines
wanna
are
split
hard.
your
Yeah, no,
time.
I've been looking for a way to like do shapes. Is it just a vector kind of
Yeah, it's
drawing
vector drawing.
It's
suite
basically
for
like a
Unity?
strict upgrade to the line renderer.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because like that's the biggest issue that I have with Unity is like there's no way to just draw shapes. Like if you want like a nice clean circle, you have to have like a really high resolution
Yeah, Vectrosity
circular
can do
square.
that.
Okay.
yeah.
Vectrosity.
Vectrosity, yeah.
It might be a little.
$30 for something. It's
Yeah.
worth it.
Yeah, it might be a little too late for this project, but for the future, like that's the biggest thing it doesn't have. But
Show the track lines.
so, and unlike, I guess you had bad experiences with test flight. I've never used the old one, but I love test flight. Like we just uploaded our build yesterday, it got approved.
To iTunes Connect.
Yeah, so we put it up yesterday, and it's available now. And then, as far as like we used it for a senior project, and every time we had an update, we just said no, there weren't any big changes, and then it just goes through immediately. So, I mean, you still have to like invite testers and stuff. I don't know how the old one worked for that, but I could throw a link up on the page if anybody wants to sign up. We have up to 1,000 spots, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
So if anyone has an iOS, I think it's 8 and up. That's the other big issue is it only works on iOS 8 or higher. So that's, I mean, at this point, if you have a recent device, you should probably be upgraded. But if you don't, then sorry. So I'll pass this around real quick. As
For 7? You're not
well, the build runs as low as 6, but test flight requires the test flight app, which only runs on iOS 8 or higher. So once it launches, it'll be available on down to iOS 6.
Right, okay.
But for the beta testing period, we're locked to 8 and 9. So, so the next person's coming up. I'll pass this around. You guys can kind of check it out real quick, and then I'll post a link. And if anyone wants to get in on the beta over the next couple weeks, then
Post a link in the comments.
What's the link or what's that?
Would you like
I'm
to
gonna
know?
have to. It's gonna be a longer link, so I'll post it in the group,
Oh, yeah.
and then you just click it.
What
You know what HDMI?
So there's buttons on the side,
Yeah.
and then when you tap them, it
Yeah, we
rotates
probably-
turrets, and that
Oh.
looks like this one.
We've got something.
Rotates all of them,
Yeah.
and
There's a
then that
VGA one where
rotates
the
just
the
that
Apple
one. And then so you're
dongle
like lining up.
hooked into it.
Wow, good
Oh,
job.
yeah.
Still very placeholder.
Okay, now, what do we, I don't know.
Yeah. So,
There it is.
so it's,
And so, actually, can you,
yeah, probably.
can you set
I'll
up
look
cues
for
that
it.
way?
Yes, it'll be more.
So you,
Okay,
I mean,
thanks.
okay.
What's that?
Camera can kind of see.
I like that.
Alright, so this is a strategy game. It's actually a good follow-up to the talk.
So your name and
My name's Corey,
Corey? Okay.
and this is a game I've been working on for almost 7 or 8 years off and on. So the name is SSG, and it's actually the working title, but I got to know it really well, and the kids know it as SSG, so I decided to deploy it as that. So it's on the Android store and iOS today. It's like Risk. I'll just show you the. So I got random maps, and you just tap to attack.
So are you blue there, or is?
Yeah, I was blue.
Okay.
So I decided I had a really hard time with easy, medium, and hard difficulties because there's just so few moves you can make because it's such a simple game. I decided to go with two very predictable AI, which aggressive, they just attack whoever's weakest, and honorable, they attack whoever's strongest. You actually can't lose on that mode. It's actually very difficult. It takes me like 200 or 300 moves to win.
Wow.
And strategic was my attempt at a human type AI, which does okay sometimes, but I don't know, it's really difficult.
How did you create the AI?
Very similar to what he said. I think it's called heuristics or something. So. Yeah, so I just look one turn ahead. I evaluate the board, see what the best, make a list of all the moves, choose the best one based on, that's what different variables. Yeah, so I guess that's it. Any questions?
Cool. Did you say that you released this?
Yes, released SSG.
So this was on a Flash, and then,
Yeah.
so how did you get it onto Android and
The users of
Android iOS, I guess?
What's that?
How do you get it onto iOS?
I use Flash Develop.
Yeah.
And it
It's
can
the best
output.
Oh, you can.
Outputs
Oh.
APKs.
I thought they were like anti-Flash.
Yeah. No, this is all free. I didn't pay for, I use this Flex, which is a free thing. So.
Cool.
What are you
Cool.
using?
What's that?
What are you using?
Flash Develop.
Oh, Flash. Okay.
We use Flex.
Yeah, well, I do action script.
Yeah.
So it takes, I think it's Flex, but it does it behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Cool.
So are you done with it after 8 years, or?
It depends on how well it does. I have a lot of ideas,
Yeah.
things I want to improve on, and different AI and options to work with. So. But yeah, it took so long. I actually worked on. I have 2 other apps out.
Yeah.
So this is just something I keep going back to, and just couldn't figure out how I wanted to set it up.
So how long has it been out in the store?
Just a couple days.
Oh, wow. Have you had any feedback so far?
I did a beta test, so I got a lot of feedback from that.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything since.
How was the feedback on the beta test?
They found it difficult, so. So most players, I'll actually show you. I added a handicap here, so you start with extra units or normal, or you can start with
Cool.
Wow.
This is, anyone played Dice Wars? Heard of Dice Wars? That was my inspiration for these.
Are the maps constant?
They're random.
Okay.
Are they procedurally generated or are they random?
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly. I pick a point and then just one territory at a time gets created. It's
Now,
actually,
it's playing the game itself right now.
yeah, the computer's going.
So,
So
you're gonna lose if you don't start taking turns, right?
yeah, well, on a large map, it's usually pretty easy to win against aggressive, but it's the smaller maps that are more difficult. So,
Okay.
Cool.
Cool. Let's go to the Sony moves.
all right, that's it.
All right.
All right, man.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing it. Sword. Okay, so we're ready to go. We put Cubotic, which is our robot game, out on Google Play and the App Store a little more than a month ago. I think May 17th. So we put it out there. We've had about 700-800 downloads. We had 8 or 10 people actually pay money. Not many. Not enough to put my kid through college on. She's halfway through. So one of the things that came up is that people said, "Oh, you got to have a trailer. You got to make a trailer. You know, that'll make a big difference." So Aaron and I said, "Okay, we're going to make a trailer." So we made a trailer in one day, and I'm going to show you the trailer and see what you think. Cool. And one thing we did learn though is that like the trailer's a minute long, but if you want a trailer for the App Store, you know it's Apple again, right? 30 seconds, not a second more. That's your trailer length. They dictate that. So if you are going to make a trailer for your game, think about that. I'll talk about what tools we use to do this. Some of you may recognize it. Let's try to get this full screen. Okay. Where's that full screen on this thing? Oh, here. Yeah. Oh, I thought there was one down here though. Okay, let's see how this works. So I had a former coworker who's in Malaysia, and he watched the trailer, and he played the game, and he went, nothing like the trailer. I mean, it is, but it's like he's expecting like rogue robots to be breaking in, and so that's our trailer.
I think that's why it's funny though, right? Like it's super, like it's an action. It's like Mission Impossible.
It's supposed to be like, you know,
boxes
exactly.
And boxes, right?
It's very tongue in cheek, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, it's a game with cubes and a robot running around. You turn it into like a big spy launch. So some of you may be familiar with the tools we used, or I used iMovie, and they have trailer templates. So this is one of the trailer templates, and that's why we could do it so quickly, because the trailer templates gave us sort of a script and told us how long we needed to make each clip. There's 21 clips in here, and most clips last 2 seconds to 2 minutes. There must be more than 20 because it's a minute long. We have some stuff in between, 22, 23 clips. And then I edited them down in iMovie and then put them in. I never used iMovie before, so in one day we learned iMovie, got the template thing.
And did it have all the effects too and stuff?
Oh yeah, it has all that stuff in between, and you just put text in for that. Because it would have been a month otherwise, and I would have never been able to make something this good.
Yeah, those effects and stuff are nice.
Did it have the music too?
Yeah, the music's in there too, and you're allowed to use it. Yeah, I just took everything, and it's licensed, I guess, under Creative Commons or whatever from Apple. And the only thing you may run into is if you do use these templates when you put them on YouTube, you might get that copyright notice. But if you look online, there's a guy who's already written to YouTube about it, so you cut and paste his letter and send it to YouTube, and they'll clear you. So what we do with ours, just to show you kind of how we do this. Let's go to sleep. Come on, baby. Oh, okay. The video's over. And then I will yield the floor. But just to show you what we've also done. And this is because, you look at the numbers, right, and you go, oh, great, 800 downloads and not enough money to buy lunch. So we created a website, keybotic.com. I mean, our company is Xemery, right? So we start with this thing, and, it's just sort of a landing thing where you can do here, you go like this, and it scrolls up, and then we have our trailer right here. And then you can play the trailer, right? It leads you back to the website, which is where you are. But hopefully, you'll make your way to the App Store and the Google Play. So we have this thing, and this is really meant to be sort of on tablet or phone. So the screen's kind of big for it, right? But just some of the stuff that we're having to do just to try to get some attention, you know, and then the trailer leads to this, and this leads to the App Store.
It's
We
difficult.
put our videos on Vimeo. We use Vimeo. We don't use YouTube. We'll put copies on YouTube, but it's easier to serve your stuff from your website without advertising all that crap that YouTube puts in. So that's it.
So where does your marketing strategy go from here?
Yeah, well, that's where we really need help. And we're about to enter phase 2 with National Science Foundation to do our full robotic game. So believe it or not, Cubotic was just something we threw out there to test some of the robot ideas. It wasn't not meant to be our commercial game. So we have to decide, do we spend time marketing this, or do we get back to what we're supposed to be doing, which is we're supposed to be making robots walk and get up off the floor in a very natural way. So
you're going to cut it.
But anybody who wants to work on marketing comes in. Because it's not my specialty.
Not that I want to, that's not what I'm raising my hand.
Yeah.
Your graphics look so great compared to last time I saw your game.
Oh, right. That was, I'm not sure when, but yeah.
Probably like 6 months ago or something. And
Yeah, so I'm really embarrassed. I did the graphics for the game, and I since hired, I hired one person to work on a 2D game, and all of our stuff in the future will be done by a professional graphics person.
Great.
Yeah, thank you. But that's as far as I can take it. That's really important for games, though, right? Is the visualization and getting an artist on board.
Cube smile face, the personalization thing is really nice. Like you had a decent personalization before, but that's like so much better.
Yeah, the cubes now. So we're going next week. We're invited to Rosie's Girls to the camp. So this is a camp for teenage girls in trades, and we're bringing Cubotic along. But we're also bringing real cubes with little faces on them, and colored in orange, and so I'm painting cubes at home, trying to get this done. And so we're going to have them actually do the stacking of the cubes themselves blindfolded while somebody else is guiding them, so they can understand what are the limitations of movement with a robot arm, and then they'll go through the game and try it.
Wow, that's a great idea. That's a great merchandising angle too.
But I'm starting to think that we might make more money on the cubes than the robots sell the cubes.
Now you're a
And then
musician.
you can start doing like cubes, like cubelets and stuff like that.
Yeah, the Cube Dynasty. Somebody has sunglasses here.
From Kid Robot. I think
I tried to talk to him, but he's so busy I couldn't get in the same.
Speaking of marketing and promotion and everything, if anybody has any companies or any places they use, I would love to hear about it because I don't know if you just try to rely on a publisher for that or what. Anybody has any experience with that?
That should be a meetup, right? So
Yeah, that should be a meetup in itself. And if anybody wants to give a talk on that, I would love to.
For Pathogen, we use a publisher called Gambler out of the Boston area, and they hired a publisher.
Okay.
And they did a really good job.
What was the name again?
Gambler, Gameblyr. Guy's a solid guy.
So they're a publishing company?
They're the publisher, and they hired the marketing.
Oh, they hired the marketing. Yeah.
Cool.
I mean,
They actually gave us cash to finish development of Pathogen, so we got actually paid, and then they took we got a certain cut of the sales until a certain dollar amount.
Yeah, I mean, Marguerite was talking about that during her talk. I don't know if you were here for it.
I wasn't.
And she said that that things have really changed, and that
it's
around. No one's
crazy.
giving you cash to do a game anymore.
No.
You have to come with the game finished, and then maybe they'll look at it.
Yeah, this was
like a book.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
So only 2 years ago
Yeah.
they changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think publishers were throwing out money for the next big idea, and now they're much
Another
more
Angry
conservative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the first meetup that we did, I told you guys about a crazy idea where maybe you could do some sort of essentially a marketing angle, but instead of going through and doing something global, doing something where you advertise AdWords, doing something different where maybe you did something cheap and local, and the idea was to have some kind of self-sufficient game demo station. And I told you guys about a kit, so I actually got one of these kits and put it together, and it was fun, and it's really cool. It's got the old kind of arcade feel to it.
Cool.
And
It's got buttons at the wazoo, man.
I know.
On the front, look at that.
It's like Street Fighter, but
They kickstarted
Yeah,
that,
totally.
right?
You know, I don't know.
It
I
looks
don't
like
know
the
if
old MakerBot, right?
This thing right now, it runs off a Raspberry Pi, and it's basically supposed to like run like old ROMs. But you know, the vision that I have for this is that this could run, you know, locally made games. And I went and I talked with the guys at Tilt, and you know, presented this idea. I was like, you know, you guys do local food, you guys do local beer. How about local games? And they were totally into it. They were like, oh, this is great. They were a little bit surprised about the size of this. We're like, it's smaller than I expected.
It's easier to carry.
I actually don't have anything going on here.
Oh, there's a light.
Did it happen?
There's a light on the top, on the underside.
One's in the water.
Oh well, it doesn't matter. It works at my home. So anyway, they're totally into the idea, which is great. I told them I would get the game I'm doing ready probably in about a month's time. It's going to have a different faceplate instead of having this, which is great. It's going to actually have the Leap Motion kind of embedded into it, so it'll just be that, and that'll actually then be 2-player. There are kits that are 2-player kits, but anyway, the other thing that I suggested to the guys at Tilt was maybe I could get like kind of a local game of the month happening, like something where you can have your game instead of being presented for a day at like a demo day, but actually get like a month's time, like counter space, attention. Maybe I'll do an event with this group. We all go out to Tilt, we all have some beers, and celebrate whoever's game it is that's being shown that month. I don't know how much work this is going to take for other people to do this. My thought is, this can offer you essentially a, if you can give me some device that will fit in the back of this thing with an HDMI out, audio out, and accept essentially a USB keyboard that says, up, down, left, right, AV, whatever, then, your game could run on this.
But you can run the game on a Pi, no?
Depending, maybe. So the Pi runs Linux. It all kind of depends. In order for me to be able to do my game, which is on Unity and requires the Leap Motion, I'm going to have something that runs essentially an Intel chipset. And I refuse to pay for a Windows license because that would be like half the cost of the whole thing right here. So it'll be running some some Linux.
Windows license. Free Windows. Join BizSpark.
BizSpark.
Says Microsoft.
I don't know.
Free software for Microsoft for 3 years.
Yeah.
Have you thought about just streaming the content to a screen, just on the Pi, and then just have it be?
Yeah, you could do that. I mean, you could also do some tricks and just have just take the cable. Have the HDMI cable reach under the
have the actual
desk.
machine somewhere.
Right, exactly. I mean, I did a test run with that just to have the the screen doing its thing, and I was like, yeah, it's halfway there. But
because the Pi probably runs mobile games and old ROMs.
Well, there's lots of it could do lots of stuff because you could also like load up Android, so then all the Android games could be available to run on this kind of a thing.
The other question is like physical power limitations of the Pi, like how powerful a game can it
This,
you don't have a graphics card.
well, let's see. I wish this.
Yeah, there's graphics
actually.
on Pi. And it runs
Yeah, I mean this will run like
S2O, doesn't it?
ROMs. This runs Doom. It runs all the emulators for different old systems, and that's basically what this thing is made for. Like you have a catalog of old games that you can play with. Hopefully you own all those games. But yeah.
What's the difference between like making like a cool box and just like sticking an iPad in it? I know that just sounds like...
or an Nexus 7 or something,
Yeah, I mean, you can do it however it is that you want. But
I just mean if you want it to be kind of more of like a public, physical thing, you know, to give it like a little fanfare, you give it like its own little home, sort of. I mean, it's not as much fun because then you don't have buttons and stuff. You're actually like using a touch screen.
Sure. I mean, there are kits out there that essentially that do that.
That you can just
you can have
stick your iPad in and have buttons.
But all told, this option is cheaper altogether than one iPad. So anybody who's interested in possibly trying to host their game on a system like this, send me an email. I'm not sure exactly, like, this is for me is a marketing effort. This is about like getting the game that I'm making, like, the name out there, trying to sell it locally. So I'm not trying to take on too much of a burden myself of like doing a different kind of business where I'm essentially selling game advertising. But let me know if you're interested, and
what's your game about?
My game is Quadra Sumo. I did a demo of it. It was a couple times back. Yeah, it was the first time.
You try to knock the other guy
off
the tower.
It's kind of a King of the Hill thing where you control a robot using the leap motion, which is a
hand tracker.
Yeah, hand tracker. So basically, what your fingers do, the robot's legs mimic. So you try to knock the other guy off.
Like a marionette.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, not to critique that, which is very cool, but if a bunch of people did want to participate in this, maybe everybody could like split the cost of like one iPad. You know what I mean? To just to simplify being able to present the games, just because that's cool, but it's a lot more complicated to get your game to show potential on that.
Yeah. Well, so my position here isn't to try to like take a monopoly on what Tilt is going to present. If you have a like different attractive option in which to present your game in the way that's best for you, that's easiest for you, like if it is like creating something like this with a easily accessible touchscreen iPad underneath, like great, like it's I don't want to be the middleman, like in interfering with everybody else trying to like present their games. I just want to start getting Tilt and other people to start like thinking about support locally made games. Like,
I just think it'd be super fun to have these in like a whole bunch of different bars, like over town, like in one game a month. That would be. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
well, the people that are interested should get together and talk about it.
Yeah,
I'm definitely interested. I don't know. My game won't run on that hardware though.
I mean, mine
will run extremely slow.
Yeah, mine neither. So we'll see what this actually looks like. When I'm substituting out the Raspberry Pi with an Intel NUC, and we'll see what that looks like.
Like get somebody at Generator to make like a nice case for you.
One thing I wanted to show you, and I don't know if anybody else is interested, I bought a 17-inch Android tablet. It's a monster, and just to bring it to show, so that you could be in a room with 4 or 5 people and show to them and not worry about having to hook everything up onto the monitor or it doesn't work.
That's a sweet business expense.
No, it's $400 or something.
Really?
Yeah, $450.
Wow.
It was cheap. I mean, comparatively, considering you pay, I don't know how much for
super cheap.
an iPad.
Right, 700.
I wouldn't think it'd be that cheap.
Anybody interested, I'll bring it out after.
Cool. All right, great. Well, thank you all for coming to the fourth Vermont Game Developers meetup. We're officially done. You can mingle and do whatever. Show other stuff you got.
I love the buttons, man.
I know,
They're totally arcade quality, right?